The moment was,
How would you define a moment?
I can't even say.
I don't know. Ask me something simple. A moment in normal time. Normal time is this.
What is a moment, though, honestly?
It's that thing, it's beyond the senses.
Moment.
I don't mind performing weddings. They're great. I mean, it's an incredible moment. I don't mind getting to know the two families and being a part of that celebration. I love the moment when I'm standing next to the groom and the music swells and the bride is coming toward him, and I look over at him and he's just on top of the world. You know, he just can't believe that this is happening, usually. Anyway, but the thing is about weddings is that nobody really cares what I say at a wedding. I'm kind of just like the flowers or the background music, and they're just looking at those people and what they say. They ought to give them mics and not me. But that's the way weddings go. I mean, I'm just part of it. I dress it up. But man, funerals. Let me tell you something about it. I love funerals. People think I'm weird here, but when I speak at a funeral, everybody is on the edge of their seat. They're all like, okay, what's he gonna say? So, and here's the thing. At a funeral, everybody has this moment, or maybe even just walking in, where we all realize that we're really mourning two things at every funeral. We're mourning the loss of someone that we really, really love or care about. And we're mourning the loss of that pretend make-believe idea that we're permanent. Us blinking out of existence once and for all. That's the fear, anyway. Well, good morning, guys. Welcome to Reality Church. My name is Lance Birch. I'm one of the pastors here at Reality. We're starting a series on Ecclesiastes today, and it's called Living Life Backward. Maybe it says backwards. I don't know. But anyway, whichever one is grammatically correct, that's the one I'm going to say. You can tell me later. But we're going to take 5 weeks. It's 11 chapters. Here's one thing I'd love for you to do. Just sit down and read the book of Ecclesiastes from the beginning to the end. I think it's like 11 chapters. It's like, thank you for that, 12. Somebody corrected me. It's 12. All right, okay. So that's how it's going to be today, all right? So it's 12 chapters. Obviously, I didn't finish it. This is not going to be a great series. But if the book of Ecclesiastes is like somebody led an artist into a room full of theologians. It's like these guys were like, how can we say this the exact correct way? All these theologians were, how can we line out these Bible truths? And then some hippie walks in and says, I got an idea, let me write a book. And amazingly, they did. And it was Ecclesiastes. So we're going to take a look at a book that almost, when you read it, doesn't look like it belongs. And that's why I love it, Because how have you ever felt that way? Like you don't belong? So we're going to be in Ecclesiastes. We're going to do Q&R at the end of every one of these two. So question and response. You can send in questions. I'm so glad that you're here, especially if you're a skeptic or a doubter or you don't know what you believe about God or anything. So glad that you guys are here. We're talking about death today. And when we're raising kids, we usually, adults know this, parents know this, there are some things that we try to at some points protect our kids from. And death initially is maybe one of those things. I'll never forget, we were doing a family get-together in Texas. It was a lot of fun. I think we were eating burgers and stuff. And my sister Tina had decided to bring, I think it was a gerbil, and to this party. She had driven about 30 miles, and her air conditioner was out in her car. And by the time they got there, this gerbil was not in good shape, okay? And they thought, let's put the gerbil in front of the air conditioner vent and see whether that'll, kind of liven it up a little bit. The gerbil was shaking. I was eating a burger. I was looking over there at this scene. I was like, this is not going to end well. That's not going to go well. But meanwhile, my daughters, Hannah especially, was falling in love with this little furry, adorable creature. And this brought a new aspect to what was about to happen. Sure enough, my prophecy held, and the gerbil went the way of the world, and they buried it. And I tried to distract Hannah, but before we left, Hannah was crying. And I thought, well, what's going on, Hannah? She said, I want to say goodbye to whatever they had named this gerbil. And I said, okay, now what do I do? So like a good dad, I brought her out to the burial site. And then I dug up the gerbil and I held it in my hand and I said, say goodbye to the gerbil, as if it was kind of just burrowed or something. And she went, bye. And then we left. Not a great dad moment. I'm not saying it was. But eventually the facade, the bubble burst and we realized, I'm not protected from everything. There is a real world. And maybe, I don't know whether that moment has happened for you or when it did, but it happens for all of us. Eventually the facade crumbles, the shine goes off of the world. We realize that the people that we are here with, we're here with them temporarily. And then when we realize that, I think that's when we form a strategy. What am I going to do with that fact? Well, I'm going to distract myself from the idea of my own death. I mean, I can post pics of a night out, or I can buy a new house, or I can get a new job, or I can change, geographic locations. I can fill up my days with hobbies and activities and coffees and things like that. That way, I'll never actually have to think that the people that I love, I'm either going to mourn them or they're going to mourn me. Why shouldn't I distract myself, though? I mean, I only die one day of my life. Right? It's such a tiny little percentage of the other actual day. So why should I even think about it? What's the big deal? So just live life to the fullest. Let's carpe diem this thing until we assume room temperature. Let's live it up. Let's do what we just want to do. And I think the book of Ecclesiastes is saying, okay, you can do that, but is that the wisest way to live? The book of Ecclesiastes, it's one of God's gifts to us to help us actually live in the real world, to help us take a look fearlessly at what life is all about, to stop us from distracting ourselves. It destroys the illusions that we build to distract us from our own date with death. The first thing that the preacher does in the book of Ecclesiastes in verse 2 is kind of pose this slap of reality, this cold water in our face. And here's what the teacher says. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher. Completely meaningless. Have you ever felt that way? If you want to stop people from pretending or playing make-believe, this is a great way to start. He said, I don't know what you're building your world around. I don't know what you think is awesome. It's not. I'm just going to throw cold water on everything that you think is going well for you, because even if it is going well, it's still meaningless. It holds no value. So what does this word mean? It does have a meaning, by the way. And actually, it's a Hebrew word that is pronounced hevel, hevel, or it's sometimes spelled hebel with a B. And it really means something like vapor, smoke, breeze. I like smoke because smoke, you can see it and you can almost feel like you could grab onto it. And I think that's the feeling here. Life is like that. It's very, it's almost satisfying. So listen to this from Psalms. This word is used all throughout Scripture. You have made my life no longer than the width of my own hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is but a breath. And that word there, breath, hebel. And I think it's supposed to be something where you're breathing out kind of forcefully, hebel. That's it. In the time that it takes to say the word, you're born, you grow, you die. We are merely moving shadows, and all of our busy rushing ends in nothing. Hebel. We heap up wealth not knowing who's going to spend it. Probably not us. When you discipline us, and later on in 39, when you discipline us for our sins, you consume like a moth what's precious to us. Each of us is but a hevel. Each of us is but a breath. It's going to take the rest of Ecclesiastes to kind of unpack what the teacher's trying to lay down here. But one thing for sure that the teacher is saying is life is short. Do you guys remember when a year used to last a whole year? When I was a kid, I didn't measure from January to January. I didn't care about all that. I measured years from Christmas to Christmas, right? That's the way years ought to be measured. And then I got older and it's like, wow, that's not quite as much time. And then, you hit high school and you go, wow, the elementary years felt different from this high school thing. 4 years later, you're graduating. And then you like blink, right? And you're at your 10-year reunion. You're like, what in the world happened? And you're talking kids. And some of you guys are talking grandkids now. It's like, what happened? I'm talking grand dogs, but they're adorable. I love them. It's going to take the whole series to unpack this, so stick with us. But for sure, he's saying life is short. And one way to illustrate this, I'm going to try to make this wick a little bit longer. I tried to right after I got up here, and I ended up breaking it off, which was very successful. So, talk amongst yourselves. We planned this part out to make things feel a little awkward so you can have a spiritual moment. Okay, here we go. Come on. There we go. Okay. The bar is pretty low if you guys are cheering that. Last service, it just didn't work out. But he lit a candle this service. We're going to keep him. All right, so here's what Scripture says. And you're going to have to look really quick, okay? Here's what Scripture says life is like. Hold. That was pretty disappointing for me. It's supposed to be smoke. Here, I'll grab after it anyway. Isn't that just like life, right? That's exactly what Ecclesiastes is saying. That was really short. It comes and it goes, or it just never comes, vanishes quickly. I mean, maybe you've found yourself saying stuff like this, like, wow, it seems like time flies the older that I'm getting. You're in an older body. You didn't know you were going to get an older body, but then you see yourself in the security cam at Baker's and you're like, who is that? Oh, that's me. Wow. But that's a bad angle. That's a horrible angle. I look better in color. listen, that's the way life is like. I mean, you might be beautiful now, but charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. And that word, I wonder if you know what the word fleeting there is. It's beauty is hevel. It's just here and gone. Joan Crawford, beautiful movie star. She said that being beautiful is like being rich in reverse. You're born incredibly wealthy, and then you get gradually poorer as you get older. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. It's like the smoke of a candle that's been snuffed out. It's just gone. More than short, life is elusive. You can't grab onto it. If you try, it just kind of escapes you. In fact, the act of trying to grab smoke, in the very act, it pushes the smoke away from you. So trying to grab onto things that are elusive is just not going to work. If you try to grab smoke, put it in your pocket, save it for a little bit later, it's real. It's real, it's there, but you can't get your hands on it. It dodges your fingers. It escapes you and me too. How to gain lasting significance in our lives. It baffles us, especially when it comes to control. I mean, there are things in your life, right, that you can control. Who you forgive, your work ethic, financial wisdom, kind of how you spend your time. But there's more, a much longer list of things that you can't control. Like when you're late, how you always choose the slow lane in traffic. You can't control that. It's just going to happen. It's a brute fact. Why does it rain on the days when I don't have an umbrella? Were any of you guys confused by the weather report, the weather forecast yesterday? That was the weirdest thing. It's like it's going to be great in the morning and then horrible later on. No, it's just a drizzly, horrible morning. And they never fire. Well, you never see a resignation letter from the weatherman. Then I'm sorry, I let you all down. We should. Torches and all right. Why do I feel low? And this one bugs me. Why do I feel low just driving around for no reason? Why? I wish I could control that. But sometimes just something comes over me. Why do people I know and love suffer from long-term illnesses? When some evil dictator halfway around the world lives into his 90s and looks like he's having a blast. Why is that? We can pour our whole lives into something, whether it's a marriage or a job or an adventure, some endeavor. And you know what? It might succeed, but it might fail. You get a great new job, super excited about it. The very next month, they could lay everybody off. Are you in control of that? No. Your job, even your health to some degree. Interest rates, wouldn't that be great? If you could control interest rates. Housing prices. Even who you will meet and become friends with, and how that friendship is going to continue or maybe end. In that way, we're way more like sandcastles and puzzles than mountains. I remember building sandcastles on the beaches of Texas. We called them beaches. They're very similar to beaches, but they're sand and a lot of tar. But anyway, we built these sandcastles, and I loved it. I loved spending my time with my dad like that. And I remember the first time the tide came in, and I was shocked. It reduced the whole thing to just this kind of mound of sand. My family likes to put together puzzles. I like to watch them put together puzzles, but they like to put together puzzles. Go on vacation, they laugh, they're talking, they're looking for stuff, and they finally get the whole thing together. But what do you do when you put that last piece in? There's really only one thing to do. You look at it for a while, go, okay, that was good. And then you smash the whole thing, put it back in the box, put it back on the, on the shelf. That's like us. Now the Bible uses grass and wind and flowers to make the same point. Our days on earth are like grass, like wildflowers. We bloom and we die. The wind blows and we're gone as though we had never been here. We pretend that we're permanent, but we're more like sandcastles than mountains. And even given enough time, mountains can be leveled. We always think that someone else is going to have the car crash. Someone else is going to get cancer. We pretend that we're not going to die. Now, Ecclesiastes is here. to give us a fresh cup of reality. The preacher, after he gets through with this meaningless thing, he says, well, if you take in your whole life and all that you do, what do you have to show for it at the end? Here's what he says. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? That word get is gain, like profit. What do we have left over? What's in surplus? And his answer, which is carried out in verses 4 through 11, not 12, 4 through 11, he says the idea is that it's nothing. Now, in wisdom literature, you never really get a straight answer. So he answers this question in kind of a roundabout way. You're going to have to stick with him because it seems like he's changing subjects, but he's not changing subjects. He's going to answer this in a way that looks fearlessly at life in the big picture. If you think you're going to gain something, then why don't you take a look at the real world? I wonder if all of us can do the same today, to see life from an angle that we don't normally look at it. And it's not safe. It's a little scary. You know, they have Christian radio, and when I was growing up, Christian radio's byline was, not their byline, but their slogan was, safe and fun for the whole family. Christian radio, safe and fun for the whole family. And I thought, when are we ever going to get a Christian radio station that says, dangerous music from a dangerous God? You might never be the same. I would love that. So if you're in the radio business, try that out. But the answer to the question, what do we get? His answer is nothing. We don't get anything. There's nothing left over. Nothing remains. What's the surplus? What will I leave behind me as a lasting monument? Nothing. The next verses pit our effort to try to eke out some surplus, to try to gain something and keep it and leave it. He says it's just a losing battle because life is elusive. And life is repetitive. Here's how he says this. Here's how he makes the argument that we're not going to have everything. He says, generations come, generations go, but the earth never changes. The earth never changes. The sun rises, the sun sets. Then it hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south, and then it turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. And if you're riding a bike, the wind blows east, and then the wind blows west, in your face, both directions. Rivers run in the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the river and flows out again to the sea. This line right here, the sea is never full. He's actually making a bigger point than a point about water. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we're never satisfied. That goes back to the water. We're never full. No matter how much we hear, we're not content. He's making this argument that everything is just going to continue going with you, without you. The sun rose before you were born. It's going to rise when you're gone. The tide's going to come in. The tides are going to go out. Taxes are going to be collected. The sports are going to go on. New movies are going to be made. It's all going to go on without you. The wind, the sun, water just constantly emptying itself into a sea that isn't getting more full. It's never fully satisfying. He's saying you and I are like this sea that's insatiable. It's never satisfied. People are like that. Just as water pours into the ocean again and again and again without ever filling it up. So everything in the world, take everything. You can have it and not be satisfied. Your eye is never going to say, I've seen enough. I've seen enough beautiful sunsets. I've seen enough of geological wonders. I've seen enough great movies or wonderful pieces of art. Your ear is never going to say, I've heard enough of beautiful music or somebody saying, I love you. We are like the sea. We're never going to be satisfied. We're never going to reach a point of complete satisfaction. And the reason for that is we were never designed to be satisfied by any of this stuff. He goes on and he says, look, history merely repeats itself. There's nothing new. It's all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people will say, hey, here's something new, but actually it's old. Nothing is truly new. Are you guys okay, by the way? You guys doing okay? I realize that this sermon is a little bit of a downer. So we long to come across something that's new. We have fear of missing out. Something new happens, the new iPhone comes out. I don't anymore, but I used to get the new iPhone. It just seems like they're coming out every 6 months now. It's ridiculous. But is that really new? There was a book written called Hamlet's Blackberry, and I realize the title is a little bit dated, but it kind of illustrates the idea that Hamlet had with him a little notepad, and he would put people's contact information and the things that he needed to do, and he used that to create a network of friends and powerful people that he used. So there's really, even though there's a new invention, the thing is still old. There's nothing really new. Today, there was a little bit of soil that we got from an asteroid that landed, and they've tried this before, it didn't work. But that seems new. They went out, they got a sample of soil, they got it back to the earth this morning, and we're going to learn about the beginnings of the universe. But that's not even new. It's that same sense of adventure and wonder that we've always had, that kind of, I need to do something big, and that will never actually be satisfied. I mean, a new president is still a president, you know? A new car is still a new car. Do you remember when you first got your new car? If you got a new car? It smelled nice, and you told people, don't ever bring food in this car. Never. We will never eat in this car. 3 months later, you're eating a quarter pounder, dropping it all over the place. I don't care. This is good. It's not that nothing new is ever invented. It's that nothing new we discover is ever really going to satisfy that old longing. And I put in my sermon here, I wrote a sentence, it is not able to be satisfied. And it put a blue line under it, as it should. And it corrected it to, as I highlighted it, it said, I am not able to be satisfied. And I thought, okay, God, this sermon's for me. And it is. If you know me, I like the new. I like going for something different, fresh, new. But it will never satisfy me, and it'll never satisfy you. If we conquer this, then we'll move on to what's next. If we do this, we'll go on to whatever we want to do next. We'll never have our fill. It's repetitive. It just keeps on going. We don't even remember what happened in the past. Think of how many things that happened in the past that we don't know about. Very little gets written in our history books. We don't remember what happened. And in the future generations, no one will remember what we're doing now. Do you really think there'll be a chapter in a book and that says, and on this date in September, reality gathered in this auditorium, and this person, laughed at Lance's joke, and they were the only one. If you're looking for hope, in other words, the book of Ecclesiastes is saying, then stop grasping at hope. So if life is so repetitive, and his life is so elusive, and his life is so short, then what should you and I do? What is left for us to do? Well, here's what I think we should do. I think we should prepare to die. That's what we all need to do. And here's the temptation for the believers in the room. We want to take this really stark view of Ecclesiastes and make it apply to people who don't believe in God. But that's not what the teacher is saying. He's saying we all live in the real world. Yeah, Lance, I get it. I mean, yeah, things end and nobody remembers. That's all for people who don't believe in God. Nope. This is common. He's saying this is what's common. This is what we share in common with people. Death doesn't care whether you believe in God or not. Death doesn't care what your belief system is, how wealthy you are, how healthy you think you are. Death doesn't care what your dreams are. Death doesn't care who you love and who loves you. This is where we live. It's where we live in this world under the sun. We all share these things in common. This is how things really are. This side of eternity, it's the world that we face. We do the same things over and over again in the world, and then we die, and our children will do the same things over and over in the same world. Being a Christian doesn't stop that from being true. Here's what it does do. It stops us from having to pretend that death isn't real. It stops you and me from having to live in a make-believe world, because our source of hope is not in this world. The preacher is actually setting up his whole argument, and please stick with us because this one is a little bit of a downer. Please stick with us for the rest of the series. But his point is a life lived with the end in mind is a life well lived. Only in preparing to die are we really going to learn how to live. Because in the world that we live in, we will soon be dead. And if we really let that sink in, then we'll do what the preacher wants us to do, the teacher wants us to do, learn to live. If we're not going to live forever in this body, then how do we live? It takes the rest of the book for him to line that out. So this isn't a one and done sermon. But step one is this. If you're looking for hope, stop grasping at smoke. It will never satisfy you. So let's not skip this first step. We spend our lives avoiding the first step to living a good life. Let's stop playing make-believe. Let's stop thinking that promotion is finally going to make me happy. If I could just get out of college or get into college or get out of the house or get my kids out of the house or get my kids to come back or change jobs or get a new house or end this relationship or start this relationship. If I could just be married or if I could just not be married. If I could finally just get the dishes done. If the laundry was finally folded. If I could, maybe get rid of these busy evenings and then next week is going to be peaceful. It's not going to be peaceful. The belief that time is on our side and we have the time to see the things we want to see or become the people we want to be. In other words, guys, here's the stark truth of Ecclesiastes. Nothing's coming around the bend to make your life more controllable. Our dissatisfaction with life actually helps us because it points to our make-believe perspective that things shouldn't be this way for us. That's why no prosperity preacher ever preaches out of the book of Ecclesiastes. They run from it because it looks at life in the real world. One day you will be dead and gone, the world's going to go on, probably without remembering you. 100 years after your death, chances are no one will ever know you lived. Now, if that sounds depressing, then stick with us during the series. But if that kind of gives you a half smile, then you're almost there. In this series, we're going to be shown what we should and should not expect out of this life. Because the point isn't just that there's nothing to be gained after grasping at smoke. The point is stop grasping at smoke. If you're looking for hope, stop grasping at smoke. Warren Buffett, who is an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. I went to his shareholders meeting. Before you get too impressed, I am not a shareholder. I got invited. They let me in, let this guy in. So I got to sit down and hear him. And he said this, and I will never forget it. It's kind of weird coming from an atheist. He says this, if you want to live a good life, write your own obituary and then reverse engineer it. What do you want people to say about you? What do you want the story to be? Well, if you know what your end destination is, then there's such a thing as the correct way to get there. If you don't know what your end destination is, then no turn is a wrong turn. But if you know what the goal is, so ask yourself, what is the story of my life? What do I want that story to be? We're going to give you a chance to do that. We're giving you a writing project on the back of these things. I don't want you to get out of here today without thinking deeply about that. So, see whether you guys have any questions. In a world that is fighting for attention in every way possible, how do we draw boundaries around what is enough? And perhaps learn to sit with something long enough to be curious and let it grow on us rather than chasing the next. Thoreau famously said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation. I wish that were true today, but it's not. We don't like the feeling of desperation, so most men lead lives of endless distraction. Video game, stock market, movie, whatever. We get a little hungry, we order a pizza. We don't like being dissatisfied for a moment. We grew up in a world full of people had no idea that you could have a device and get food delivered to your door. They had to sit with things. They had to think about things. And what do? We've decided, no thank you. Endless distraction, constant stuff that you can do and go and be. And I really do think it's a discipline to just, please go camping or something. Go to Nebraska where there's no light pollution. Look up at the sky and see the satellites or the falling stars, whatever's coming our way, and just sit there and think. Watch some, watch your grandkids play, and don't, look, this is not a shaming sermon. I'm just saying, I think we're just keeping stuff in front of us so much because it scares us just to be alone in our thoughts. And I know this for myself because at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I don't have anything in front of me, I'm thinking some pretty weird stuff. Are you? I mean, I think about stuff, and sometimes some of it scares me. It's like, wow, life is unsettling, and that makes me long for God instead of not. So I think it's a discipline you got to do. It almost sounds like we're supposed to have not quite a defeatist view, but definitely a pessimistic leaning view of the world. Well, that is what it sounds like, isn't it? From the writer's point of view in Ecclesiastes. Optimistic regarding God and his end plan, but very pessimistic about the world. Is that true? How do we stay hopeful and joyful in the middle of knowing everything is a vapor and meaningless? Well, I think what the writer of Ecclesiastes is going to get to is that it's a possibility that people of meaning can exist in a meaningless world. That really what your world is what's going on internally, and you're exporting out what real meaning looks like to a world that is endlessly distracted. And so there's this remaking that has to happen in your heart. So instead of what I would call pessimism, I think it's a realistic optimism. It's like this. There's two stocks. You're in a time machine. You come back. You know that one of those stocks is going to tank, and you know that one of them is going to go through the roof. What the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying is don't invest in this one, the one that's going to tank. Invest instead in the one that's going to go through the roof and exponentially make you wealthy beyond your dreams. And I know I'm speaking in monetary terms, but what I really mean, I think he's saying, look at what's going on and don't pretend that the new stuff is going to fill you up because it's a vapor. Instead, build your world around something else. When my father died, I wasn't speaking to him. We've been estranged for 6 years. Decades later, I think of him a lot, so much that I talk to him, hoping he knows that. I now understand him so much better. I mourn not having this understanding when he was alive. I talk to him, sending my words to the sky. Am I crazy, deluded? What do I do with this deep desire to connect with my long-dead father? Oh, you are normal. You're right down the middle of the road normal. Every time I hit that intersection from Portal Road to 96th, I think about Dad, and that's where I would call him. That's where I'd pick up my phone and call him. And yeah, I say things out loud to him. Look, I don't know whether he can. My dad's probably got more going on right now than listening to me, and that's good. That's okay. But I think it helps me. I do. I think it helps me to say the words. I think there's something about saying stuff out loud that lets me fully embrace it, fully live in it. And so I would encourage you, don't let anybody tell you how to mourn. That's bad news. You got to clean out that closet. Well, why don't you just shut your face? I'll clean out the closet when I want to. Nobody tells you how to mourn. And so if that's the way that you're mourning, then please do that. Do it, and it's not like prayer. It's like it's a verbalization of what's already going on in your heart. Why not say it out loud? To hear yourself say it, I think, might move you a little bit towards healing. And mourning is a long process. I don't think that this thing is just over. When it's never going to completely go away. You're always going to be longing. And that's the theme of Ecclesiastes. It's this longing, wanting that's so repetitive and never ends up having anything to grab onto. What if eventually there is something to grab onto? So There are these videos with those at the end of their life talking about what mattered, and they always wish they hadn't have worked so much, spent more time with loved ones, bought less. And we see that, but then often do the opposite. Why do you think it's so hard for us to truly believe that? I think it's hard to believe it because there is a liar in this world. I mean, there is an enemy of your soul that wants to make you believe that if you would just take one more trip to Amazon, then you'd be satisfied. One more delivery at your door, then finally, oh, good, that aching will be filled. Ecclesiastes says that there is like a God-shaped void in the middle of who you are, and nothing will ever fill that. But if we're not on a neutral playing field, we're on a battlefield. Your soul does have an enemy, and that enemy doesn't like you, is not winking at you, doesn't think you're cute or funny. That enemy hates you and will use whatever it takes to destroy you. And part of that is, let's just have them waste their life. Let's have them think that at 65 they can check out and just kind of play golf and collect shells for the rest of their time. Let's take them out of the game. Let's just make them think that the next new thing is going to fill them up. So I think basically that's it, that we've got an enemy and we need to be on the guard. You can look at Ephesians chapter 6, or you can look at a lot of the other segments that Paul talks about this. We have someone who hates us. Many of us are never taught about how to talk about death and end of life. How might we become more comfortable with these conversations? Have you ever learned a new language? It's always awkward at first. I speak Spanish, but I speak Spanish like Tarzan. Me go to store today. And I don't ever get like anyone, oh, he's so fluent. I can understand it, but I can't speak it that well. I think whenever you're learning a new language, it's going to be awkward. So you need to go through that. And the first thing is, we just admit that it's real. I think it really is something we ought to normalize. It is a part of life. Yes, it's only one day of your life, but it's a significant day. And I think your kids need to know at age-appropriate levels, that one day there's going to be a story told about me. I don't take pictures anymore without thinking this is going to go on a slideshow. Come on, guys, you needed to laugh harder at that, but you feel a little uncomfortable about it. Oh, that's a little morbid. Yeah, well, I don't think so. I think that one day there's going to be a story told about me. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not in control of that, except in this way. What if something could be renewed inside of me so that God could give me like a new heart? Look, I don't want to leave you guys in Ecclesiastes. I want to leave you with the gospel. The fact of the matter is that the whole Bible points to real hope, not smoke. And the real hope is Jesus Christ. Jesus knows you and loves you anyway. He saw you on your worst day, and he is thrilled with you. Romans 5:8 said that while you were still his enemy, Christ decided to leave heaven, come to earth, die for you. Forgive your sins if you would place your faith and trust in him. There is substance, but what the lie of the enemy is the stuff that we can touch and feel. He says that's the real stuff. But the stuff that we can't see, that's the fake stuff. It's the opposite. He switched the price tags on us. So believe. And one day, your story, hopefully, will be about a Jesus who saw you in your sin, who you believed in, who granted you eternal life, and that made all the difference. So stick with us, because one day there will be a story told about you. I want you to think about it. This might be a little cringy, but I'm going to sing a song. I'm going to sing a song to you guys, and then I want you, for the next 3 minutes, to write out what you want your obituary to say if you were the one writing it. So let's do that.